Here.
Director Bernstein?
Present.
And we have a report.
Hey, remind you to turn off your electronic devices, iPads, cell phones, whatever else you got.
Many people have them on. I don't, but I'm just curious. Are people required to, or is that?
No, I'm asking this as a courtesy because there's nothing worse than having a meeting and the cell phones go out with somebody.
I second your
Yeah,
request. I just-
you only have a short time here, so let's be careful.
Can't be any sure.
Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I know, that was an exclamation point. I got that. All right. There's no reportable action out of closed session. Oh, our first item is Menlo Park Firefighters Benevolent Activities. Good timing, huh?
Yeah. Weird how that happened. Chris Denbaum, Menlo Park Firefighters, for anyone who doesn't know. I think everyone here probably knows that. So the two things we have to report are the egg hunt, which we hosted, which was a great collaboration between Menlo Park Firefighters, the district, and the city of Menlo Park. Apparently, we estimated somewhere around 1,200 kids. Gave away a bunch of candy, served a bunch of hot dogs. Easter Bunny had a long line, so that went off great. And on the same day was actually Rebuilding Together Day in East Palo Alto. Well, actually, it's Rebuilding Together Day all over the place, but we did a house in partnership with Kiwanis Club, which also went great. The family was very happy with the results of the home, so we appreciate the district's support on that. Led some on-duty fire engines to help out where they could, so that was great too. So we really appreciate that. And yeah, that's it for Benevolence. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Our
Our next order of business is a public hearing. Conduct a public hearing on the notice of destroy weeds declaration. And I will open the hearing. Is there any comments about weed abatement?
I have no comments. Come into me, Rick.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. So then we will close the public hearing.
Good work, Ron.
Thank you. Consider and approve a resolution authorizing the fire chief to undertake weeds and removal and abate the public nuisances. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
So moved. Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Resolution passed. Reports and requests. President's report. Oh,
Thanks,
let's
Ron.
see.
You, Rick.
Yeah, I know, but I'm trying to think what. The chief had a one-on-one. What was the date?
We had it a week ago.
Okay. We had one a week ago and we got another one scheduled. And I've been trying to get a hold of the mayor of Menlo Park. Haven't been successful yet, but I'll keep trying. So I'll make that work. Reports and requests and directives. Any? Okay.
Oh,
Finance
have to
committee.
do something.
Of course I have to do something. I have a report.
Well, let's have it.
Okay, first I want to thank the chief for having lunch with me. I think it's good to meet that way, and it was really unique the way the chief had set up a demonstration for me, because there was a car accident across the street, and I was able to observe one of the engines work on some of the individuals that were injured. So it was a learning experience for me to see the engine company in action. I attended the CERT debriefing exercise on April 17th, which Director Carpenter also did, and Director Einson was one of the evaluators.
And Director Bernstein was one of the CERT people.
And Director Bernstein was on the CERT. I attended the Easter egg hunt and saw a lot of fire trucks there. Thank you guys for your participation. I went to the open house with Senator Hill and Representative Mullen on May 1st. Spoke to them about some of the issues involving the gasoline situation that we have here in Menlo Park and in San Carlos. I attended a special districts meeting on May 7th and the police memorial on May 8th. And I just want to thank the chief for setting up the website for the calls for service. I think that's a big step for people to see that and the swiftness that you have been to it. And I'd like to, at this time, remove in our agenda items 29 and 30 and pass them to the discretion of the chief and his staff on those particular items. He has the information, and I'm sure with his staff that they can make a determination as to what they want to do with those two items.
How about 31?
31 I'd like to discuss,
Okay.
but definitely 29 and 30.
Okay.
I'm not sure that's the proper procedure. I mean, I think once you've noticed it, somebody could, in theory, come and want to discuss something that's on the agenda. It seems to me that once it's fixed, you have to deal with the item. You could say you've got nothing and we move on. But I don't think you remove it from the agenda once it's posted.
You can pull things from the agenda. I mean, for something like this, if you get there and it's clear that somebody's sitting here in the audience and intending to speak on that item, you could choose to hear them out on it if you wanted to, but there's no problem. Fundamentally, we pull things from the agenda and table them or take them off and kick them to next month, whatever we want to do.
Speaking to my experience on things like this is that I think there's a big advantage to announcing ahead of time that someone's going to remove an item from the agenda. Because if somebody is sitting here waiting to speak on it, then you could hear them at that time first. Or they could in fact leave rather than waiting 3 hours to be told, I want to remove it from the agenda.
I have just something brief to say too. So I just want to thank the chief for a nice lunch and we discussed some of the county issues. So just an FYI, I contacted Supervisor Horsley to make sure to discuss some of the things you and I talked about. I'm waiting to hear back from him.
Any other reports from directors? Okay. Finance Committee.
Okay, so we met on May 12th in the morning, and we were at that time introduced to our new Administrative Services Manager, Anna Yatsek. Did I pronounce that correctly? Anna? I'm just introducing you and how we introduced you at the Finance Committee meeting as our new Administrative Services Manager.
Okay, sorry, because, we had cut out.
That's okay, so welcome aboard again.
You?
There are some things on the consent calendar that will just be approving, basically the treasurer's report and the implementation of we discussed the implementation of the changes to the fund balance policy and general fund designation. And I don't think that we need to discuss that, but I just wanted to add that Director Carpenter brought up something that he sent out to the board regarding charts of accounts, if you just want to touch on that for a few seconds.
Are we there yet?
Well, this is the finance committee report.
Okay.
Yeah, we did discuss at the Finance Committee with Anna the fact that we had found the New York State Controller guidance to all fire districts in New York State to use the same chart of accounts. And it looks like a very well thought through template that Anna's going to take under consideration as she proposes how we might revise our budget format.
And then the last quick item on, I just wanted to ask you, we talked about the GAN limit and approved the calculated limit of the just under 29 million. And I know that there's a new part of this where we have to comply with the new county or finance rules for the 2014-15 operating budget. So I'm assuming that's the reason that's not on this agenda. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so,
We need to do, after it was heard by Finance Committee, we need to do a 15 days
right,
that we could not, yes, we cannot do this particular board meeting, which means that we will make it on next board meeting.
right, which this will be brought back to the board on June 10th. And that's,
Yes.
What is this, I'm sorry?
oh, I'm sorry, the again limit discussion on,
Yeah.
from the finance committee. So, okay, that's it for the finance committee report.
Anything else?
Anything else, Peter?
Okay. Let's move on to liaison reports from Menlo Park.
I am meeting with the two Menlo Park liaisons next week, one on the second and third, and the other on the fourth. And there's a couple of issues, we're still trying to get the fire code passed. There's some issues of land swap. And I think maybe the general issue,
Wait, when you mute on this end, she can't hear us, so you have to ask her to mute on her end, I think. When she's not
Anna, would
speaking.
you mind muting on your end? So I think one of your little babies is barking.
I know, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I think there's been kind of a feeling that we actually haven't had a very good relationship with Menlo Park. And I'm kind of known around Menlo Park as one of those peacemaking kinds of guys, so I thought it probably would be perfect for me that we were looking to, I'm actually joking, but I feel like that I actually have a pretty good relationship with people on the council, and that we might be able to develop a relationship that's less contentious.
Okay.
It's not even contentious, it's sort of politely ineffective.
East Palo Alto, I would like to congratulate our fire prevention bureau because the hot ticket item in East Palo Alto at their council now is garages and illegal construction. Our guys have been going to the council meetings, they've been helping out their building department, and they're doing a good job. They're there trying to help them, and their council appreciates it. It's gonna be tough for them. That's pretty much it from East Palo Alto. How about Atherton?
Yes, I met week before last, I think, with Whitmer, who's the council designated liaison with the fire district. And we took the occasion to talk particularly about the El Camino Real issue where they have under consideration whether they should ask the state to reduce it from 6 lanes to 4 lanes. I shared with them the resolution which the chief brought to my attention, that was one of our primary response routes. He was very receptive when I explained to him our concerns. That basically the only way we can move north and south on the peninsula is on the Alameda, and El Camino Real, and Middlefield. And if they restrict traffic on El Camino, it's going to back up traffic not only on El Camino, but also on the Alameda and Middlefield. And I said the most important thing was that when they had these discussions, we just simply wanted a seat at the table. And I think I shared with you an email response in which he said, he would do everything he could to make sure that happened. I also routinely have breakfast with the fire chief, not in my capacity as a board member, but just as a citizen, with the police chief. And again, just trying to maintain really good relationships with Ed Flint. And he remains very supportive of everything that we do at fire department.
Good. Good. San Mateo County, we have 2. So, would you like to go first?
Sure, I attended the May 6th meeting, and I was fantastic fire code. Thank you, Chief, for setting the foundation for that, made it really easy. And then I sat in on the presentations by CAL FIRE regarding the 2 new fire station projects. And had emailed both Supervisor Horsley and Supervisor Slocum regarding some of the concerns I had relative to the locations. And I discussed this with the chief before I put my 2 cents in. So, thank you.
I don't really have anything, so I'm waiting to hear back from Don Horsley to me.
All right, that brings us to the consent calendar. Do I have a second? All those? Discussion?
Yeah, I would like to remove some things. How do I do that?
Just say
Start the discussion?
discussion.
Okay. And I apologize, all the interesting stuff is on the consent calendar. 9, 10, 11, and 14, 16, 17.
14 what?
16 and 17.
Okay. So number 9, you have some,
It's been removed.
We vote on the motion, right?
yes. We vote to accept it.
We didn't do agenda item number 7. We skipped that.
Oh, it's
Chief's
something.
report. I'm sorry.
It's actually in the packet. It's in the packet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was short and sweet.
Okay, so we have a motion to accept the consent calendar.
Except for items
9, 10, 11, 14, 16, and 17. Those in favor?
Aye.
I,
Those opposed? Okay.
and I would then ask that those items that have been removed from the consent calendar be placed at the end of the regular calendar.
All right. Is there any objections to that?
I second his motion.
Is it in the
Is it a motion?
motion?
No?
No, I'm just, it's a consent.
You can discuss them wherever you want.
Okay, so we're gonna put them on the end of the regular calendar, the regular agenda.
You're okay with that, right, Chuck?
So that brings us to item 18, consider and approve a resolution authorizing the fire chief to enter into an agreement for the completion of Station 6 schematic design. I believe that belongs to you, chief.
Yeah, Director, so I don't know if you have any questions, but as the report states, we're trying to bring on a new architect. We have interviews scheduled for tomorrow. The previous architect, which will retain for Station 2 but not move forward with Station 6, had a number of issues over the period of time since we engaged that individual, and then it was Mary McGrath. She then moved into Beverly Pryor Architects. Beverly Pryor was bought out by HMC Architects, and then HMC Architects recently fired the staff that we were working with. So we decided that with Station 2, it was important we retain them only because we're far enough along where that's not a critical item. But with Station 6, it is a critical item, so we're proposing to use this amount of funding, or at least the cap there, to retain a new architect so we can move forward with Station 6. And again, we have interviews tomorrow. We've received bids from 3 organizations, 2 that we've accepted that are under the limit here that we'll interview tomorrow.
Do I have let's make a motion a second.
Motion.
I'll second.
Okay, discussion?
It's just a question. An item like this, it seems to me that you ought to have the discretion to do that, and it shouldn't have to wait for the board or be held up by the board. Is there some way we could give you authority to do these kinds of things and proceed without coming to the board for this
His
kind of
authority
thing?
up to a certain limit.
Right, it's beyond my financial authority.
But can't we approve a limit for this project, like architectural services? I mean, they can have $500,000, and as long as we're within that you could switch architects? It just seems to me that, I think this is not a problem. I just don't see why this is on the main agenda. It just seems to me, I could see this on the consent calendar too, frankly, but. I'd like to find a way you didn't have to come here for changes like this. Because if we didn't have a meeting or something, you might be delayed for a
Right,
month.
it would be helpful. I mean, I think the meeting, you heard where we are. I mean, we're interviewing tomorrow, so we're kind of, we're on a parallel track where we're not losing time or any more time than we've already lost disengaging from one vendor. So I guess it's really up to the board, and I'm not sure how we procedurally would do it outside of the threshold for the funding. I'll defer to council on.
You guys put on the agenda for the next meeting.
We can. If you'd like, we can research
Well,
it.
was the original contract approved by the board?
That's correct.
So it seems to me there would be a way to say, if for some reason there was a substitute of contractors, that would, and it was within the limits of the financial limits approved, that would be something that
Right,
you could do.
you'd have to actively have an agenda item that approved spending for a particular project up to X dollars, or that just wasn't done here.
We can look at that, Director, if you'd like.
Mr. Vada, that is correct. Given the current purchasing policies and procedures and the authority limits, this really does need to go to the board, and that's why we did.
Thank you. All right, is there any other discussion? I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so it passes. Item number 19, consider approval of resolution requesting the city of Menlo Park revise its zoning ordinance to include the district, to revise their zoning ordinance. I believe this was put on by Director Carpenter.
That's correct.
Right, but I'll move to approve so that we can start the discussion.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion.
I'm certainly prepared to answer any questions that people have about this. We have previously, in November of 2011, essentially made these requests to the city. We did it at a staff level, and at a staff level, they chose to ignore our request. And what's happening is that we are being treated, with respect to Station 6, as if we were a commercial enterprise, rather than a government agency. And Menlo Park's ordinance regarding public facilities is unique, near as I can see, in the state of California, in that it does not acknowledge other government agencies except the city, the county, and the state of California. Palo Alto, for example, very explicitly includes other government agencies. Most other locales that I was able to look at in terms of the definition of their public facilities include government agencies. And I think that this is one of the reasons why we have a somewhat strained relationship with the city of Menlo Park, because as far as they're concerned, we don't exist. And when I brought this to the attention of various members of the city council, they were all surprised that we were not included. That's the first resolution. The second resolution recognizes the fact that they ignored our request in November of 2011 to, in fact, include the second parcel that we have, which we planned on using for the expansion of Station 6, and include that parcel within the boundaries of the specific plan area. And so the specific plan as adopted divides our two properties. One is in the specific plan and one is in R3 residential. And given the setbacks required for separate parcels, that precludes building something which is on both of those parcels. You have to have two separate structures. And so the second resolution asks that these two parcels be merged and that they receive the PF designation. The city has talked about, in consultation with staff, providing a conditional use permit for us. There's absolutely no precedent for that in terms of the way they treat their own parcels. Their own parcels are all public facility parcels, and they are what are called permitted uses rather than conditional uses. And so our resolution basically is from the board to the city council, asking for the same things that the staff did in 2011 and which were ignored.
Any other discussion?
I want to ask Chief a question.
Sure.
Is the building, is Station 6 a straight?
The existing facility?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sorry, a what?
Tear down.
It's, the whole thing's
Yeah.
being, is it conceivable that we might want to sell the entire, both properties and buy a different property somewhere else?
We actually looked at that at one point based upon some of these issues, and we brought in a consultant to help us make a decision whether or not we were going to be successful going through the city. So we actually were looking at property within Atherton, with no vendor that wanted to sell to us, but certainly by moving the station elsewhere because of some of the very issues that Director Carpenter relayed. Once the consultant did their review, it was more favorable to move through with the existing facility, but it was going to be a laborious process because that's what Menlo Park's process is. So we made the decision to move forward at that point, and you know, we're on the path. But we did look at it, Director, just so you know.
I'm not disagreeing with Peter, I just wanted to make sure that, I mean, all we're doing here is making a request, as I understand, but I just want to be sure, in a sense, that they grant the request, the value of the property is probably 1/2 or 1/3 of what it is today. So we're actually leaving money on the table by doing that.
No, that's not correct.
Enlighten me.
A public facility property, if it is offered to a non-government agency, would have to be rezoned to a commercial use.
But that's not a sure thing.
Well, given nothing in zoning is a sure thing, it is surrounded by commercial property. It would be a merged parcel. They would not be able to then divide the parcel into two pieces. So they would have to deal with the parcel as a merged parcel. And I think it would be very difficult for them to do anything other than to assign the designation of the adjacent properties.
But still, both properties, whether it's R3 or commercial, both properties would be worth more than they are as a public facility. It's a public facility, we first have an
Well, we
obligation.
just had this discussion. You and I disagree on that. I'm saying that, you know, in the discussion I've had with the lawyers and other people is that if we put this up for sale, you know, one of the contingency clauses would be that it would be rezoned.
We would have to.
You know, and then you'd go to the city and say, hey, it's not going to be owned by the government anymore. What do you want to do with it? And then they would have the responsibility to rezone it. And the principles of zoning would suggest, wouldn't guarantee, but would suggest that it would have to be zoned consistent with adjacent parcels. And the adjacent parcels are all commercial.
I guess I'm missing the point, but that's more valuable than public facility.
That's right. So if it
All
were,
I'm saying is, right, it just might, it's possible that it's in our interest to just forget the whole property and go find a better property that might,
we've been through that, and I don't
Well-
think we made the decision not to do that. And
I
so,
was just asking about the decision. We still could not get what we want on this property, and they could rezone it. Now we've got something zone PF, and we don't have what we want. So the fact is, we could be in a worse situation than all
what
this.
is it we're not going to get?
I don't know, but I mean, you've been complaining about the process. It seems to me, maybe we wouldn't get the ability to store fuel, maybe we wouldn't get the coverage we want, maybe we wouldn't get any number of
Well,
things.
if you look at the resolution that's here, it speaks to the floor area ratio, and it speaks to permitted use. So we're not talking about conditional uses, we're talking about permitted use. And as a permitted use, the issues that you raised, and with the FAR that's here, there is no problem.
Well, but we would need a conditional use, is that not correct? Even as a public facility? I thought we needed a conditional use permit for the fuel, the toxins.
No, that's because the city has chosen to treat us as if we were a commercial entity, rather than as a government facility. You know, they are sitting there just twisting their little bureaucratic knife in the back of the fire district.
So let me confirm, I'm not doubting you if that's correct. Public facility zoning does not require a special use permit for use permit for toxics and fuels?
From my understanding, Director, and it's a little bit different than Director Carpenter's, but we would have to go through the city's process regardless. So we're going through an ER, and that will lay it out, and we'll know the full extent. But right now, you know, if you're gonna have any type of fuel storage or what have you, we're gonna all have to go through that process. That's the next item on the agenda.
And that would be an EIR, but that's not,
Right,
that would not be a conditional
That's,
use.
Correct.
and that's,
Conditional use puts us in a situation where we build a building and we decide we want to put up another antenna on it. We have to go back to them and say, hey, you know, we want to put an antenna on the roof. A 2-foot antenna would have to be, you know, we'd have to go back with. A conditional use gives them the ability to control every single aspect of what we do, even after we built it. And a conditional use, in my opinion, is an undue constraint on the fire district on the part of the city.
so Chuck, what is your concern then? Because I
Well, I
don't
just wanna make sure-
understand how the
we're-
conditional use
we're-
even pertains to this.
We're essentially downzoning the property, which means
Downzoning.
by going from its current zoning to a public facility.
And we're rezoning.
No,
We're
we're
rezoning.
urging it to rezone half of the property
So we're
to be the same as.
downzoning it. We're,
No,
Well,
no.
I don't agree with that.
Chuck, we are not in the real estate business. We are in the fire business. And we are rezoning it for the purposes of the mission of this institution.
We're only actually asking for half of it to be rezoned to be the same as the other half.
yeah, I'm sorry to disagree, but that isn't right. Public facility properties, because I buy them, I know they cost
Will you
less.
buy them?
I do, for
And how do
schools.
they, and then for
Well,
schools?
what typically happens is a developer comes in and they lay out a whole thing, and the city says, you gotta lay out so much for public facility. It could be a
Yeah.
church, it could be a
Yeah.
school, it could be whatever. And they divide it up. Those properties, they can't sell for as much as they sell the residential or the commercial or whatever it
That's
is.
the reverse transaction, what we're talking about here.
I thought you went for public facility.
No, that's a developer who's being required to turn something into a public facility.
Well, we could be a developer.
We're not a
I
developer.
don't,
We're a developer if we sell, okay.
We don't want to be a developer. And
I'll-
I'd be pleased to put that to a vote. I do not want
The
this
fact-
fire district to be a developer.
The fact is okay. I think it's fair to say that the property would sell for less with the public facility zoning than it would sell today for with its current zoning. That's called downzoning.
I disagree, and so, but that's
but
not
I'm
the
not
issue
even
before
sure
us.
why that's the issue. That's not the issue, the whole issue of, I mean, we're not even talking about selling. I don't,
We're just about to spend millions of dollars building a new
right,
building.
why would we want to sell?
Okay, well, I don't have any objection going forward. I thought it was worth exploring it. We're basically diminishing the value of the district's assets.
In your opinion, I think we're maximizing the value because right now, we are setting ourselves up to be controlled and constrained by people at the city who have a whole different set of objectives than we do regarding our mission. And the purpose of these two resolutions is to put this parcel in a category that you have any place else where it's a public facility as a permitted use.
Chief, you got a comment?
Just a couple of facts. Before, for Director Bernstein and for others, before we actually looked outside the area because we were having some issues with the city, we brought in a commercial real estate agent and we looked all over Engine 6's area. The cost of the parcels was so astronomical that it wouldn't have been a good decision for the district because of the cost. The majority of the parcels were not available or conducive for the district's purpose. So at the end of the day, by purchasing the home behind it, we gave ourselves enough space to build a station that's actually in a very strategic location for the district. So I know we're talking about the public facility designation, but at the end of the day, this is a strategic location for the district in terms of where we were. So, I don't feel that we didn't really want to have to move. We made it work. At one point back in the 50s, this was actually proposed to be the main fire station for the district. It's off of the main drag, Santa Cruz Avenue. It's got good access through to Atherton, to portions of Menlo Park and so forth. So, location-wise, it's a strategic location.
And we did in fact, for the record, try to buy the adjacent property on Hoover.
That's correct. And they turned us down and then later on sold to someone else. And the irony in that whole thing is we used to own that parcel. So the district wasn't allowed to build what they wanted there, and they built it here. And the irony is also that the home behind was occupied by the gentleman who was pushing the issue that we now have a larger fire station. So now we own that property. So it's kind of an interesting history.
Any other discussion? I'd ask council, do we need to split this into 2 resolutions?
It is, oh wait, you mean resolution B?
Well, we have.
Well, you have 2 resolutions in this, you should vote on each
Are
resolution
you
separately.
asking about dividing the question so that there's 2 separate motions?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I think you should vote on both resolutions separately.
Separately. So I'll move to divide the question, so to vote on the 2 resolutions separately.
Okay, there's a motion to divide the question. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion on that?
In favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, so the first resolution, which is, I'll entertain a motion to approve a resolution requesting that the city of Menlo Park revise its zoning ordinance to include the fire district as one of the government agencies.
So move.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay.
And then I'd move the substitute second resolution, and this evolved in the course of discussions today by email between myself and the lawyers, because I was made aware of an issue that I had not properly addressed when I drafted the resolution, which was the floor area ratio issue. And so we went over that in some length and back and forth, and the lawyers have now provided a new attachment B, which addresses the floor area ratio and specifies that it shall be 6.0, rather than leaving that question silent as my resolution did. And this gives us sufficient floor area ratio to do what we currently plan and a little bit of fudge room, but it also provides a floor area ratio that's substantially less than the adjacent properties within the downtown specific zone. So it shouldn't be at all concern to the city in terms of the density implications.
What is the neighborhood?
So
1.25.
So why don't I make a motion to approve the amended attachment, or second resolution in attachment B, so that we can start the discussion.
I'll second that.
Now we can discuss.
Okay, discussion.
I just want to be clear. Is there an issue of coverage of the lot or only FAR?
Well, FAR is to a large degree that was the limiting condition for us, because in the generic definition of public facilities, there's a 0.3 FAR. And we're saying in the case of this parcel that the FAR ought to be 0.6. But it will be, even if it's 0.6, it will be the lowest FAR any place in the downtown specific area, by far.
So this was discussed actually in a previous city council meeting
Right.
3 years ago, about 2.5 years
somewhere
ago.
around there.
And I think the council seemed to be okay with the 0.6 number, because didn't you have that discussion?
Yes, I did.
So this is not going beyond what has been discussed before, and to my knowledge, the 0.6 FAR number seems to be fine with, well, that was another council though, but.
So, well, but the important point is that we have
We're not-
found in the past, and I think that you can recall recent discussions where things that have been discussed at the staff level somehow don't quite get to the council. And the purpose of these resolutions is to make it clear that this is what the fire board wishes to have happen and wishes to ask the city council to do.
Right, no, I'm just talking about the number,
Yeah.
because Chuck was asking about the number.
Well, I'm gonna meet with two council people next week, and I just wanna be educated on this.
Yeah.
So I understand, but right now, the standard FAR for PF is 0.3.
Yes.
This would be creating a new, essentially a new zoning of public facility of 0.6.
It would-
They'd have to have a new designation,
particular-
PF2 or something of that
This,
sort.
yeah, this particular parcel would be a PF with a .6 FAR.
Just this parcel.
And are there any, as far as you know, are there any other PFs with something, I'm wondering about some of these schools and so forth that they're doing.
I would imagine there were, but I didn't have the ability to research that. For example, one of the German-American schools is going to be converted into a new school. I can't imagine that they're going to be a .3 FAR.
Well, that's why, because I live right next to it, it's right behind me,
Well-
and it's going 2 stories. and-
Guess what? The city has no control over that.
Right, because it's
It's a
the
school.
school district.
Yeah.
And that's why, that's a whole different animal than
So,
what we're dealing with.
it's probably going to be closer to FAR 1.0 by the time they get done.
And would you have,
Maybe even higher.
do you happen to know if SRI is considered, is?
No, it's not public facility. no.
What about the VA?
The VA is
Federal.
not.
Federal, though, right,
They
okay.
don't
It's
follow
federal.
any of the rules.
Okay.
The public facilities that we have in the city of Menlo Park are essentially the city of Menlo Park's activities, including their corporation yard and stuff like that.
Yeah. And West Bay, but it's mainly their
No,
administrative.
West Bay's not even considered a public facility under their ordinance. No.
That's nice.
Well,
And so what happens is, we get tax bills, for example,
From
for our
West-
parcels.
Yeah.
and then we have to write back and say, wait a minute, we're a government agency. It's craziness.
And West Bay's technically.
But we already dealt with that with the
Yeah.
first resolution. The second resolution is, okay, folks, now that you've recognized that the fire district is a government agency, we would like you to take these 2 parcels, merge them, which is not going to be as easy as it should be because they have ignored our request to put them both in the specific plan area. One still is R3 and the other one's in the specific plan. So the first thing they're going to have to do is to redraw the boundaries of the specific plan to include the entire parcel. And then they will merge the 2 parcels and, in accordance with our request, hopefully, designate it PF .6 FAR.
Let me ask one last question. Matt, is there any reason that you know of, I know it's always best to have a lot line adjustment and have it be 1 parcel, but there's no particular reason there couldn't be 2 parcels, as far as you know, is there?
You know, I would have to defer to my colleague Tim on that, who's been helping Peter, and I am not there's no particular reason that I know of.
Yeah, I can
But-
tell you, as
but
plan, I can
it's-
tell you as plan commission why
Yeah.
it doesn't work is because both parcels have setbacks,
Right.
which means that you can't build a building which is on both parcels because the buildings wouldn't have setbacks.
Right.
You
That would
can't
be- I can
build
imagine that would
to,
be a problem.
you can't do a lot, you cannot build to the lot line, either in the residential district or in the specific plan district. And so you'd have a building, and then you'd have to have 2 setbacks, 1 for each parcel, between building A and building B. So we wouldn't have a fire station, we would have a building and another building. And technically, there could be no connection between those 2 buildings because they are separate parcels.
So, once this gets passed, and I'm assuming it's going to, what is the timing? We got a city council election coming up this year. I mean, so, it almost feels like we might make some headway with this current council, because we have 3 people coming up for election. I mean, how soon can we even start? I don't even know how long this is going to take.
Well, it's up to the city.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I wish I could tell you that once you do this, they're gonna do it tomorrow, but I'm not convinced of that either. I mean, with all the things that they have going on.
Certainly, the council members that I've talked to are very sympathetic to this.
Yeah, that's why I'm bringing this
And
up.
recognize that what we've entered into, the next item we're gonna come on is this contract with the city to do all their mumbo jumbo and stuff. And it would essentially do all the things that we are asking to do, but it would do it in a slightly different way and as a conditional use rather than as a permitted use. But these things have to happen if we're gonna build Station 6.
Right.
If we don't do these things, you can't build Station 6. It's just simple.
Anything else?
No,
All right.
for the question.
So then,
The amended resolution?
I will ask to, yes, a vote on the amended resolution that the city of Menlo Park merge 700 Oak Grove and 1231 Hoover in Menlo Park and zone the merged parcels as a public facility. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay,
Thank you.
passes.
And I was just saying, comment, I sort of apologize for my passion on this thing, but I get so frustrated after my many years of service on this board as to the way the city does not support the fire district. And I've seen time after time after time where staff requests made in good faith get ignored. And I'm hoping that by moving this to the resolution level, that we will get the council's attention. Thank you, colleagues.
Thanks for bringing it up.
Thank you for your hard work,
This is
Peter.
a smart thing to do.
Good move.
It's taken a long time.
Okay, that takes us to item 20. Consider and approve a resolution authorizing the fire chief to enter into agreement with the city of Menlo Park for contract administration for the preparation of the initial study and mitigated negative declaration for Station 6.
I move.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion?
I would like to see it be a lower price, and I think the chief is gonna work on that, so.
Correct. Tim Kremen, who's Matt's counterpart, is actually gonna be at the meeting with the vendor, and we're gonna try and work it down to a more reasonable number.
I could just say, I mean, I've been involved with a lot of citizen groups and things like that in Menlo Park, and as far as I know, there's no opposition whatsoever from neighbors for this project.
Correct.
And the great tragedy of this is that if they had asked, if they don't, we asked them to do in 2011, this would have been covered by the EIR for the specific plan,
Yep.
and there would be zero cost of doing this.
Yep.
So this just underscores that when the things that we've asked them to do are ignored, you know, what happens is we end up bearing the cost of doing this is remedial work. It should have been done in conjunction with the specific plan. And had it been done then, would it cost a penny additional?
Can I just add something, Peter? It's not, I mean, I was questioning some of the stuff about the value before, because I think the course we're on is fine, I voted for it, but I tell you, I think if the district was saying that we're gonna leave the downtown, that the merchants would have been a strong force on our behalf, and we could have perhaps mobilized them, because I don't think they want us to leave the downtown, so.
Well, having been on the board at that time, I can tell you that we didn't want to play hardball because we thought we would get the support that we needed. And by the time it became apparent that we weren't going to get the support that we needed, it was too late. So, yeah, we probably made a mistake. And, you know, you described yourself as being one of these people who's a peacemaker.
No, I was joking.
Oh.
Are you a
Well,
troublemaker?
you know, the ultimate peacemaker is the chief. You know, and the chief goes out of his way not to try to knock heads with his counterparts in city government. And particularly when those counterparts keep changing and deals which the first person made, the second person doesn't even acknowledge, I think our chief gets taken advantage of. And so that's where we are. You're absolutely right. If we had played hardball back then, I think we could have gotten it, but we were assured by the city staff we didn't have to play hardball.
Different city manager than too.
So is that one more?
Yeah.
Okay, is there any other discussion on item 20? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to item 21.
I have one other comment
Stand
I made
still.
before, and that is, I think this is an item that was awfully long with a lot of colored things. I don't think we on the board needed all that, and I just like to see us save some paper in the future. And I think if you said it's available on the website for anybody who wants to look at it, that would have been sufficient.
Well, one of the things the district has done is given us all iPads. I personally would be quite comfortable not getting a hard copy and just picking up my iPad. And I know consuls do that, so it's obviously legal. I also know some people don't like not having a hard copy. But if you want to save paper and printing costs, Michelle, as far as I'm concerned, just tell me, Director Carpenter, I sent the package to your iPad, you're on your own.
If you want a hard copy, copy it out at home.
It's up to you, each individual board member.
If
You want to get
If
us,
some people want paper,
Electronically?
some do not.
Let me say, I was really only talking about the report here, which is 20 or 30 pages of colored copies.
right,
And I just don't think we on the board needed that much detail there. I think the issue of how we get it is a whole other issue. But I'm one of those old-fashioned people, I print everything, but I don't mind getting it online and printing it, so.
Item 21. Consider and approve a resolution to renewing the contract with Innovative Claim Solutions. I believe that belongs to you.
It does, yes. And I'm not sure how you guys want me to handle this. I received some questions from Director Bernstein in relationship to the report, so I was gonna go ahead and answer those while I discuss the report, if that's okay.
Hey, before we do that, let's have a motion.
I'll move.
Second?
Second.
Okay, now we're in discussion
Okay.
phase, go for it.
So, ICS is our current third-party administrator of our workers' compensation program. We're a self-insured workers' compensation provider. They have been our provider since, I believe, 2002. So the last renewal happened in 2010, I believe, and it was for a period of 3 years. And at that time, the district had experienced a decrease in the number of claims that have been filed, as well as the number of open claims. So at that time, the negotiated sum for the renewal was reduced from approximately $55,000 to around $42,000. We're currently up for renewal July 1st, 2014, and the provider proposed a 50% rate increase for the 3 years for contract services. And a lot of that is related to what happened over the course of that 3-year contract that immediately precedes this renewal. I was able to negotiate a little bit more favorable terms with ICS. Initially, they proposed a rate increase to $80,000 in year 1 with a 3% increase in year 2 and a 3% increase in year 3. We negotiated the terms down pursuant to the report. So it'll increase to $72,000 in fiscal year 14-15, approximately $76,000 in 15-16, up to $80,000 in 16-17. However, there would be a reopener provision that if we saw at least a 10% fall in claims, that we would be able to go back and renegotiate the rate. So some of the questions that I received from Director Bernstein were to know what the claims data for this current fiscal year, am I understanding correctly,
Yes.
Director Bernstein? Okay. Right now, we're at approximately 16 claims
New
for the
claims.
year.
New claims.
Correct, for the year. So as far as you also asked for what are the dollar value of the amounts reserved for these cases by each year. So there's going to be some changes in the way that the workers' compensation fund is set up. Before my arrival here at the district in 2009, there was a internal service fund that was created for purposes of the workers' compensation. Through that, I was able to find that basically what happened is the district funded that fund with sort of annual cost as well as a reserve amount, if you will. So the cost for each of the claims in each year, we were looking at about, in 11-12, it was about
$520,000. In 12-13, we paid out about $633,000. Approximately the same figure in 13-14, and then it proposed for 14-15, they're budgeting $338,500. When I spoke with the senior accountant about how that amount is arrived at, she stated that there's a formula that's utilized that is based on payroll backfill, straight time pay rates. Apparently it's a rather confusing formula, so thankfully she kept a little basic for me, so I'm sorry I can't describe that in greater detail. So some of the other things you asked for are how many of the claims are active employees versus retired employees. I wasn't able to get that data in time for this meeting. I apologize. I didn't get your email until about 2 o'clock this afternoon. I can tell you though that based on our annual report from 12-13, we had, I think there was only about 7 or 8 retirees and the remainder were active employees. The most significant reason that we're seeing such an increase in claims are sort of who's getting injured and the age group and the nature of the employees. So what's happening is our biggest age group that's being injured are those folks who are 40 years old and above. In fact, in 12-13, the age group between 40 and 49 represented 45% of the total cost incurred to the district.
What percentage?
45%. So what that means is that we have a lot of folks who have injuries that are being re-aggravated over the course of their career, and those aren't new injuries, but they're claims that remain open because they may incur future expenses. And so we have more and more open claims because we have more employees who are not yet retired, who have prior conditions, pre-existing conditions, if you will, that get exacerbated during the course and scope of their work here at the district. So that's why we're seeing an increase in open inventory claims. But ICS has served us well, as you can see from my report. They've done a very good job of closing out open claims as well, probably closing out about, they've closed out a total of 45 claims. So that's impressive. I did try to shop around to see if there were any other third-party administrators. One of the challenges is because we're a single service entity, it's difficult to find third-party administrators willing to take on the liability of a fire district because quite frankly firefighters and other public safety members represent the highest cost when it comes to workers' comp. I contacted San Ramon Valley Fire Protection and Woodside, and they both use ICS as their third-party administrator. So these rates were comparable to what is out there in the market, as well as we just have a very limited pool of vendors to choose from to provide this service.
Can I just respond? I wasn't in any way taking issue with any of the things here, but what shocked me is looking at the most recent, you've given more recent data now, but the most recent printed data here show that there were 67 open claims. Now, it might be that one person has more than one claim here, but this is sounding like somewhere between a third and a half of the employees in the district have workers' comp claims. Is that for real?
No, because the number of open claims can relate to folks who have ongoing issues after they've retired. It doesn't mean they might have done a service retirement and they have an open claim. For
You said
example,
only 8 of them were retirees.
8 of the claims is what you asked. You asked me how many are active. I'm sorry, I didn't understand the context of your question. All I saw was how many are active employees versus retired. So you mean as far as the open indemnity claims are concerned?
Well, I'm trying to understand how many of the people are actually injured right today, for example.
We currently have approximately 8 employees out on workers' compensation leave to date. That doesn't mean that we don't have more employees who have open, ongoing claims with the workers' comp.
I see. So even if they return to work, they could have an open claim.
Correct. They're not required to settle the claim. They're not required. If there's going to be incurred future liabilities, they keep that claim open and ongoing.
But nothing is being billed against it currently, probably, unless they're getting physical therapy or something like that.
Right. We only get billed for services provided. Correct.
Could you estimate how many of our employees have claims?
Well, I can go based on, I have
Just
this,
estimate.
Sure,
It's
how
not
many of our
two-thirds, I don't
employees?
think.
No, well, let me take a look at 1213 and give you a sense of how many. We have 25 employees.
Who have claims?
Of some nature, yes.
And
I know
are
that
those-
one is, there's one that's currently, we've proposed a settlement, so we're waiting to hear
And
back
are
on
those
that.
25 current employees, or does that include the retirees?
That would include, that's just current employees. But again, these are, please take everything with a grain of salt as I'm sort of getting these numbers on the fly.
Let me just follow up, just so I'm sure.
Sure.
As you're saying that, if there are 25 people, only 8 of them are actually off work.
Correct.
And the others are working.
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
That's all safety?
So we have 2 non-safety folks with claims.
Okay.
But yes, the vast bulk of our claims
I would think
are
that-
folks that are eligible for
But
4850
we have
leave.
2 employee groups, so, right, we have
Correct.
different employee groups, I wanted to.
Yeah, I would say about 98.5% of all of our claims are for our public safety folks.
Are you aware of any of these people who are actually represented by attorneys in
Yes.
this process? Of the 25, how many are represented by attorneys?
I don't know that figure,
Okay.
but like I said, we proposed a settlement for one person, so I know, I'm sorry, I can speak to that on just one level. In fiscal year 12-13, ICS received 6 notices of representation. So in that fiscal year, there was approximately 6 folks who were being represented.
And is that separate from the union as far as you know?
This is completely not related to the union
This
at
is
all.
all individual representation.
Absolutely.
Um, And just out of curiosity, does ICS, or does the district or anybody do anything in terms of analysis of the claims or analysis of risk or training with regard to that?
So we have a comprehensive safety program that Chief Stevens has undertaken. I'm also part of the safety committee and I'm the district's risk manager. That's something that was absent at the district for several years. ICS for many years didn't have anybody that they could meet with to talk about this annual report. It's only with my arrival that we sort of reconnected and we'll be having quarterly meetings to go over claims and talking about ways to resolve claims and close claims. So,
Also on the table is to actually be either contracted safety officer position or to have the battalion Chief Stevens do the program himself and get through the training.
yeah, so
And
we're,
it's part of our strategic plan also.
yes, we're making steps to try to analyze, well, where are these accidents happening? That's part of what we do on the safety committee is we look at where are we getting claims, what are the nature of the claims, what can we be doing better, how can we train folks better? But again, many of these claims relate to exacerbations of pre-existing conditions, prior old back injuries, old knee injuries that are being re-aggravated during the course and scope of work, so.
The majority of them are, I would say, like a chronic nature, a knee or a back, as opposed to, say, a burn or a cut or something of that sort?
We get very few of those. Most of it is back, knee, shoulder, hips, joint issues, you know, sort of the nature of the job, it takes its toll on the body, so.
Anything else?
Can I just say, I think this was really helpful, because I think this is, I mean, again, we should hire these people, and I think, oh, that's fine, but I think this is an issue that we probably ought to look at and see if there's something we can do, both for the sake of the firefighters, and we don't want people getting hurt. And if there's something wrong with our equipment, if, I'm making this up because I don't know, but the hose is too heavy, the rungs are too far apart, whatever it might be, we should be looking at that.
And that's something that with the inception of the safety committee is absolutely sort of the cornerstone of what we're doing there. But the good news, the positive news out of this, while there is a rate increase, is that we are seeing a decline in the number of claims. As you can see, in 12-13, there were 24 claims to date this year, and we're very nearly at year's end, we're at about 16. So we're seeing a steady decline in the number of claims being submitted. It's the open claims that are kind of creeping up on us. Right. I'm
Well,
sorry.
in fact, you're expecting almost, two-thirds of the dollar value next year, which is a substantial.
Yeah, I mean, just to give you a sense, the future estimated liability that ICS provided to the district in fiscal year 12-13, the total was approximately $1.7 million in future medical and future liabilities.
Since we're self-insured, could you ask the accounting people or whatever, to what extent we need to capitalize that liability and recognize it on our books?
So to what extent do we need to capitalize the liability?
Yeah, just, and recognize it as a real liability. I'm assuming we're not recognized, it's not on our financials now?
Well, we had an internal service fund that reflected a reserve and an amount, and it's part of the human resources budget that's being proposed for fiscal year 14-15. So I'm not sure I understand.
Okay, we'll talk about it then, but there's a difference between a fund and a reserve. And
Okay.
normally the reserve is kind of your best estimate of what you
Right.
think it's gonna be or something.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how that's going to be reflected in the new budget document. It was previously reflected in budget documents through that internal service fund. That reserve
And this
amount.
is Anna. It is reflected not only in our reserves, but also in the operating budget.
Perfect.
So we'll be looking at that as we look at possible different charts of accounts for the 14-15 budget, possibly.
We're gonna discuss
On
it
June
tonight.
10th.
We're discussing it tonight, I think.
What?
The funds. It's on our agenda tonight.
Are you talking about the thing you took off of the consent calendar?
Maybe.
Yeah, but in terms of in terms of the budget process, that's not gonna happen until June
Firefighter
10th.
job is an inherently dangerous position.
I'm sorry, if I could just, Director Brinson, you said, to what extent do we need to capitalize our liability? And then I thought there was a second part.
No, that's it, but I think
Okay.
Anna has answered it. She
Okay.
says it is capitalized.
Okay.
That is, it's on our books, but I don't. I've seen the fund, but the fund isn't the same as the reserve. I just don't know. In other words, is the fund fully funded, or is it just part of the liability? I don't know.
So my understanding is because we're moving away from the internal service funds and into a more traditional budget structure that reflects a reserve, the current reserve amount is about $1.9 million, which would be consistent and in line to cover the cost that ICS has projected for us for future liability. So right now, if this number were to come due tomorrow, this is all your liabilities on the books right now. They've estimated it to be $1.7 million. I have a reserve of $1.9 million to pay that liability. That's my understanding.
Then maybe I don't understand something. I'm sorry. What's this roughly 633,000 that you estimated
That's
at the
the,
end of 13?
that's just the annual cost of claims.
Of the annual cost.
Correct.
The
That doesn't,
annual portion of the total.
correct.
claims.
That doesn't foresee the future potential medical costs.
So that's
They're
the
two different
actual.
figures. That's correct.
The 6%.
So the actual expenditures for claims were those totals that I gave you.
Anything else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, item 22. Consider and approve a resolution authorizing the fire chief to enter into an agreement with the California Fire and Rescue Training Authority for administrative services for the Urban Search and Rescue Medical Training Course. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
The report's pretty straightforward for us to do this training, and FEMA gives us the money. This is the cost of being able to support it.
Any questions?
I'll just make a comment again. This seems like one of those items that could be on the consent calendar.
Yes, sir.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'll, okay. Item 23, consider and approve a resolution, the fiscal 2014 budget in the amount of $1 million, and it's for the Urban Search and Rescue California Task Force 3, and it's a revision to the 2013-2014 budget is carryover.
So moved.
Second.
Those, any discussion?
Same comment as before.
I need to recuse myself. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And one recused.
Thank you.